Sagittarius, the archer's flame. Reclaiming the fire they tried to dim. Have you ever stood in the darkness holding a flame that once roared, now reduced to a faint flicker, dimming it just enough so no one else would feel overshadowed? I'm Sophia, and welcome to Zodiac Wisdom, the place where astrology meets the intimate truths of the soul. Today, I want to speak to every Sagittarius who has ever been told, directly or indirectly, to be less. It happens quietly at first. A smaller laugh here, a more careful word there. Your eyes lowering when you used to meet the world with an unshakable gaze. You convince yourself you're being considerate, that maybe it's kinder not to shine so brightly. But here's the truth. For Sagittarius, a sign born of fire and guided by Jupiter, shrinking your light is an act against your very nature. You are meant to expand, to inspire, to live so fully that your life itself becomes a map for others. Astrologically, Sagittarius carries the mission of the torchbearer, spreading wisdom, joy, and possibility. Jupiter asks you to grow and share, not to hide. When you reduce your flame to fit into smaller rooms, you cut yourself off from the horizons you were born to explore. This is not just about reclaiming confidence. This is about reclaiming your essence. Your light is not arrogance. It is your contribution to the collective. And when you withhold it, you rob not only yourself but also those who need your fire to find their way. If you've ever dimmed your spark for the comfort of others, stay with me. We will walk together through the gates of recognition, remembering, standing tall and living ablaze, until your fire burns freely again. And when you're ready, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe so we can keep meeting here where the cosmos reminds you exactly who you are. Gate 1: Recognizing the dimmed flame. It begins so quietly you might not even notice. One day you're laughing with your whole body, head tilted back, eyes alight. And the next, you're measuring your joy, keeping it just shy of overflowing. Your voice, once rich with certainty, becomes cautious, each word weighed before release. You avert your gaze more often, sensing that somehow, your brightness unsettles those around you. Sagittarius, this is how the flame begins to dim, not because it has lost its power, but because you've been taught, directly or subtly, to make yourself smaller. For a sign ruled by Jupiter, this contraction feels unnatural, yet you may endure it for years. Perhaps it happens in a relationship where your successes spark envy instead of celebration. Maybe it unfolds in a workplace where your bold ideas are met with polite dismissal, or in a family where staying humble is code for don't outshine anyone. Slowly, you begin to edit yourself, not because your fire has gone out, but because you're trying to keep the peace. Astrologically, this dimming often coincides with challenging aspects from Saturn or Pluto. Saturn, the planet of discipline and restriction, can make you second-guess your impulses, convincing you that safety lies in restraint. Pluto, with its deep transformative pressure, can draw you into power dynamics where your light is subtly or overtly controlled. Under these influences, Sagittarius' natural expansiveness can feel caged, and the internal question becomes, who am I allowed to be here? I remember working with a Sagittarius man named Adrian, a gifted storyteller who used to captivate entire rooms without effort. When I met him, his voice was quiet, his gestures minimal. He told me he had learned to read the room over the years, avoiding any story that might make him the center of attention for too long. I thought I was being considerate, he said, but somewhere along the way, I stopped telling the stories that mattered to me. His flame hadn't vanished, it was still there, glowing faintly under the weight of self-censorship. The image that comes to mind is that of a lantern wrapped in thick cloth. The light inside remains steady and alive, but its glow is muted, visible only in hints and shadows. The world sees you, but only in fragments. And because the flame still exists, you may convince yourself that nothing's truly wrong, until you remember what it felt like to burn without restraint. Recognizing the dimmed flame is not about blaming those who encouraged your shrinking. It's about acknowledging that somewhere along the way you made a trade, safety for authenticity, harmony for radiance. And while there may have been moments when this choice felt necessary, you now face the deeper truth. Living in partial light is a slow erosion of the soul. This gate is the moment you pause and truly see what has happened. It might be triggered by a conversation where you hear yourself speaking in a tone that doesn't sound like you, or by looking at an old photo where your eyes seem brighter, your posture more open. Sometimes it's an external reflection, a friend saying, "I miss the old you," or a stranger marveling at a glimpse of your unguarded joy. For Sagittarius, awareness is everything. Once you see that your light has been dimmed, you cannot unsee it. And that awareness alone begins to loosen the fabric covering your lantern. You may start laughing a little louder again, voicing an opinion you would have once swallowed, or wearing something that feels like you, not because it's strategic, but because you remember how it feels to take up space. The core lesson here is that the absence of full light does not mean the fire has gone out. It is still there, waiting for your permission to blaze again. And permission is the key, because while others may have influenced the dimming, only you can decide when to remove the cover. Sagittarius, your nature is not meant for half light. You were born under a sign that seeks to illuminate, to inspire, to expand. To recognize the dimmed flame is to recognize that you've been living in a version of yourself that is incomplete. This is not a failure. It's a starting point. From here, every step forward is a step toward the full, uncontained fire that is your birthright. Gate to the spark of remembering. Once you've recognized that your flame has been dimmed, there's a moment, sometimes sudden, sometimes gradual, when a small spark flickers back to life. It might be ignited by a memory, an old song, a photograph, or even a conversation that reminds you of who you used to be before you started making yourself smaller. This is the spark of remembering, Sagittarius, the gentle but unmistakable pull toward your true self. It often arrives unexpectedly. You might be cleaning your home and stumble upon an old travel journal filled with wild, unfiltered dreams. You read your own handwriting and think that person was fearless. Or maybe you're at a gathering and for a moment, you forget to hold yourself back. You tell a story with the same unbridled enthusiasm you once had, and the laughter around you is genuine, warm, alive. In that instant, you remember, this is me. Astrologically, this moment is aligned with the energy of a new moon or a solar eclipse in Sagittarius. New moons are times of reset and renewal, a blank canvas upon which to set fresh intentions. Eclipses, especially when they touch your sign, have a way of jolting you back to your essence, stripping away what no longer belongs so your authentic self can emerge. Under these cosmic influences, your inner fire receives a surge of oxygen, reigniting the embers you thought might have gone cold. I once worked with a Sagittarius woman named Marin, who had spent years in a corporate job that required her to tone down her ideas. She had been told her visions were too big, her passion too much. Over time, she stopped speaking up, convinced it was better to be agreeable than to be herself. One afternoon, while visiting a friend's art studio, she picked up a paintbrush for the first time in years. "I don't even know what happened," she told me later. "I started painting, and suddenly I remembered how I used to feel when I created without rules. It was like a door opened inside me." That was her spark. A tiny but undeniable flare reminding her that her bigness was not a flaw, it was her signature. The spark of remembering is often small, but it carries a promise. If you tend to it, it will grow. The key is not to dismiss it as nostalgia or a fleeting mood. Instead, treat it as the sacred messenger it is. Pay attention to what triggers it. Was it a place, a person, a certain kind of conversation? Was it the way you felt when you stopped worrying about how others might perceive you? These are clues to the conditions in which your flame burns brightest. The metaphor I use for this stage is a glowing coal buried under ashes. For a long time it seemed like the fire was gone, but the coal is still warm, still alive. All it needs is a breath of air, a bit of kindling, and the courage to remove the ashes hiding it from view. Sagittarius, the remembering is your breath. It stirs the coal, promising the return of full flame. What makes this stage so powerful is that it's not about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming someone you've always been. You're not starting from scratch. You're reuniting with a version of yourself that has been patiently waiting beneath the compromises and adjustments you've made for the comfort of others. And the beauty is, this version of you is wiser now. You carry the lessons from the time your flame was dimmed, and those lessons will help you protect it in the future. I've seen many Sagittarius souls resist this spark at first. It can feel dangerous to remember your full power, especially if you've been punished for it in the past. There's a part of you that wonders, if I let this flame grow, will I lose people again? The answer is simple but not always easy. You might. But the people who belong in your life will not fear your fire. They will gather around it. This gate is not about forcing the flame to blaze overnight. It's about feeding it little by little. Speaking your truth in a conversation, wearing the colors that make you feel alive, returning to the hobbies or passions that used to light you up. Every small act of authenticity is like adding kindling to the fire. Sagittarius, the spark of remembering is your turning point. It's the moment you stop asking, "Who do they want me to be?" and start asking, "Who am I when I'm free?" And when you live from that place, your flame doesn't just return. It burns with a steadiness that cannot be dimmed by the expectations of others. Gate through the stand of the archer. There comes a point, Sagittarius, when remembering is no longer enough. You can recall the fire, feel it in your bones, even see glimpses of it in your actions, but now it's time to stand in it fully. This is the stand of the archer. The moment you decide that your light is not negotiable, your truth is not up for debate, and your presence will no longer be diminished to make anyone more comfortable. Standing in your full light is not always met with applause. In fact, sometimes it's met with resistance. People who grew accustomed to your smaller flame may not know how to handle its return. You might notice subtle shifts, friends pulling back, colleagues questioning your choices, family members hinting that you've changed. And you have changed not into someone else but back into yourself. Astrologically, this gate is blessed by Jupiter, your ruling planet. Jupiter's energy is about expansion, vision, and the courage to explore beyond the familiar. When Jupiter is strong in your chart or by transit, it amplifies your willingness to take risks, to protect your values, and to follow the path that aligns with your soul, even if it means leaving behind what feels safe. For Sagittarius, Jupiter is both the wind at your back and the horizon ahead, urging you to trust that your truth will lead you exactly where you need to go. I worked with a Sagittarius woman named Leora, who had spent years in a relationship where she made herself smaller to avoid conflict. Whenever she spoke passionately about her dreams, her partner would dismiss them as impractical. Over time, she stopped sharing them altogether. After going through her own spark of remembering, she decided to enroll in a graduate program abroad, something she had wanted for years. When she told her partner, he said, "If you go, we're done." And she went. I realized, she told me, that if my dreams were a threat to the relationship, it wasn't the kind of relationship I wanted. That was her stand of the archer, choosing herself without apology. The image I hold for this stage is of an archer standing in the middle of a wide, open field, bow drawn, arrow aimed toward a horizon no one else can see. You know that not everyone will understand your aim. Some will tell you to lower your bow, to wait, to aim somewhere closer. But this time you trust your own sight. This stand is not about aggression or proving anyone wrong. It's about alignment. It's about saying, "This is who I am, and I will not shrink to fit into spaces that require me to be less." When you make this choice, something profound happens. The relationships, opportunities, and environments that align with your full flame begin to find you. You stop chasing acceptance because you are living in a way that naturally attracts the right people and paths. For Sagittarius, this is also the point where fear transforms into fuel. The fear of being too much becomes the fuel for showing up exactly as you are. The fear of losing people becomes the fuel for building connections based on mutual respect. And the fear of the unknown becomes the fuel for exploring it with the same curiosity that has always defined you. There's a quiet but powerful confidence that comes with the stand of the archer. You don't need to defend your right to shine. You embody it. You no longer measure your worth by how easily you can blend in, but by how honestly you can stand out. This doesn't mean you're loud all the time, or that you dominate every space you enter. It means that wherever you are wholly yourself, no masks, no shrinking, no rehearsed versions. And here's the truth. Not everyone will stay when you stand in your full light, but those who do will meet you there, not in the shadow but in the brightness, where both of you are free to be exactly who you are. The stand of the archer is a declaration without words. It's in the way you walk into a room without bracing for impact. It's in the choices you make that reflect your values, even when they're inconvenient. It's in the boundaries you hold without guilt, and the dreams you pursue without seeking permission. Sagittarius, when you take this stand, you are not only reclaiming your fire, you are anchoring it so deeply within yourself that no one can dim it again. You are the archer, steady and sure, eyes fixed on a horizon that belongs only to you. And when you release your arrow, it will fly true, not because the world clears a path, but because you finally trust your aim. Gate 4, living in full flame. When you have reclaimed your spark and taken your stand, something begins to shift in every corner of your life. The flame you once hid now burns openly, and its light reaches farther than you ever imagined. This is living in full flame, Sagittarius. Not just having your fire back, but embodying it in a way that transforms everything you touch. At this stage, your relationships begin to change. People who are drawn to you now are not intimidated by your light. They are inspired by it. They don't ask you to dim yourself, because they have their own fires and understand that your brightness only adds to the glow. You also begin to see that some connections that once felt essential no longer have a place in this new chapter. Not because of anger or bitterness, but because they cannot meet you where you are now. The beauty is you release them without guilt, knowing that your paths have simply diverged. Astrologically, Mars lends its strength here. Mars is the planet of action, drive, and vitality. In a fire sign like Sagittarius, Mars ignites passion and the courage to act on it. It's no longer enough to dream or plan. You feel compelled to live in alignment with your flame every day. This could mean pursuing a creative project you've always wanted to start, speaking more boldly in your work, traveling to places that awaken your spirit, or deepening relationships that celebrate your authenticity. I once worked with a Sagittarius man named Elias who had always dreamed of opening a small outdoor adventure company. For years, he kept it as a someday idea while working a safe but uninspiring job. After going through his own journey of reclaiming his fire, he decided to act. I realized, he told me, I wasn't waiting for the right time. I was waiting to feel ready. But the truth is, the fire made me ready. Within a year, he was guiding groups through mountain trails, sharing his knowledge and passion, and creating the life he had once only imagined. Living in full flame is also about alignment between your inner world and outer expression. You stop second-guessing your instincts and start trusting the pull toward what excites you. Your work, your relationships, and your daily choices all begin to reflect the energy of someone who is fully alive. And because fire is naturally magnetic, opportunities begin to find you. Collaborations, invitations, and experiences that match the frequency you're now living in. The metaphor I hold for this stage is that of a lighthouse standing on a rocky shore. It doesn't chase the ships. It simply shines consistently and without hesitation. Its light serves its own purpose, anchored, unwavering, whole. And in doing so, it becomes a guide for others navigating the dark. Your flame, Sagittarius, works in the same way. By living fully in your light, you don't have to convince or persuade. You simply inspire through being. There's a liberation that comes with this way of living. You no longer walk into spaces wondering if you're too much. You no longer shrink in moments where your voice or ideas could make a difference. Instead, you move with the quiet assurance that your presence has value. Not because you've earned it through perfection or sacrifice, but because you are here, and your fire is part of the design. Of course, living in full flame doesn't mean there won't be challenges. There will always be moments when the winds of doubt, criticism, or exhaustion try to flicker your light. But now you know how to protect it. You have built the boundaries, remembered your worth, taken your stand, and learned to tend to your fire daily. You've moved from fearing your own brightness to nurturing it as the most natural thing in the world. For Sagittarius, this stage feels like coming home, to yourself, to your purpose, to the rhythm of your own truth. And the best part? Your flame no longer burns just for you. It becomes a gift. Someone might hear your laughter and feel braver to share their own. Someone might see you chasing your dream and finally give themselves permission to do the same. Your fire becomes part of a chain reaction of light. Living in full flame is not about proving anything. It's not about showing the world how much you've overcome or demanding recognition. It's about inhabiting your own life so fully that the world can't help but feel your presence. You shine not to be seen, but because shining is what you were born to do. Conclusion: the unapologetic flame. Sagittarius, you began this journey with a flame that had been hidden, wrapped in layers of compromise and caution. In Gate 1, you saw it clearly for the first time. The moments your laughter grew softer, your words more careful, your gaze lowered to keep others comfortable. In Gate 2, you found the spark of remembering, the living ember beneath the ashes, reminding you of the vibrant, curious, and free soul you have always been. In Gate 3, you took your stand, holding the bow steady and refusing to lower your aim, even if it meant some would drift away. And in Gate 4, you stepped fully into your fire, letting it illuminate every corner of your life without hesitation. This is the unapologetic flame. Not a blaze that burns recklessly, but a steady sovereign light that needs no permission to exist. Astrologically, when Sagittarius lives in alignment with Jupiter's expansive energy, every choice, every connection, every opportunity begins to reflect the truth of who you are. You stop living in rooms too small for your spirit and start walking landscapes built to hold your full horizon. And here's the truth you carry forward. Your light is not arrogance, it's your nature. It was never meant to be rationed or hidden away for the comfort of others. The right people, the right places, and the right paths will never ask you to be less. So hold your fire without fear. Let it warm, guide, and inspire. Not to prove anything, but to remind yourself and the world that you were born to burn bright. If this message stirred something within you, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom. Here we walk together under the guidance of the stars, reclaiming the truths we've always known and the light we were always meant to live.